And there was a choked up voice on the other end of the line, and I finally recognized Joe Moffat, and he said, he was kind of alternately sobbing through this, and he said, you know, I'm a really close friend of Andy and have been and will continue to be so, and I just can't see you rip the guy to shreds because he's done so much for the company and contribute a lot to the technology of the industry, and the guy is just a terrific guy, and I really hate to have you do it. And I said, Joe, you know, you really touched me, and although we did put a lot of work into it, I can't go through with that kind of thing either. So I said, first thing tomorrow morning, I promise I'll get to work, and I'll send a memo around to everybody in the whole plant. And I said, I'll ask for tributes and accolades and really turn this into a wonderful, warm farewell for the guy. And he said, I really appreciate that, and I'll talk to you when I get back. So we got the material out this morning, and Helene collected it just before I came over here. I honestly haven't had a chance to look at this yet. So, Helene, do you have that? And I just like to read to you some of the warm... I didn't know we had that many employees left. Let me just read a few of the comments here. This is the kind of thing that Andy will keep with him, I think, the rest of his life because of the comments that are in here. I gave it home. Right. Get rid of these. No, I noticed there's some good ones in here. Well, here's the engineer. Oh, sorry. Well, no, wait. Well, no, wait. Andy, hold on. I know this. Andy who? I wish I had checked these, but Helene, the next time when you collect these, would you please let me know? All right. Oh, God. Can you just bear with me a few minutes? Some warm and wonderful stuff in here. That creep is the father of my baby. By the way, here's one from Health Time. Oh. Mr. Levy has an extraordinary sense of timing. Oh, this is embarrassing. I don't know what to say, Andy. Obviously, we didn't give people enough time. I know they could have come up with something. Well, God, we've got 20 minutes to kill. I don't know. I guess, obviously you people don't know Andy Levy, or you would have been able to write wonderful things about him. But, you know, maybe the best thing to do is just to go back over some of the things I learned about him, trying to put together some facts for you, and maybe we can save this whole luncheon with that kind of a presentation. Maybe after that you'll feel kind of ashamed of yourself. I'm really disappointed. Maybe then you'll come up with some tributes for it. You know, oh, what the hell, the more I think about it, let's roast him. You know, when we first started to put together this roast, I thought there's only one real source to go to for any young man, and that's his mother. So it took me a long time to get in touch with her. She's a little feeble. You've got to bear with me. It's a great honor to have Mrs. Levy here today. She's a wonderful woman who has a slight speech impediment. She sounds a little like Molly Goldberg, but then she also sounds like her speech therapist is Rosanna Dana. What can I say? So let me welcome her out. Mother Levy.
From my little son Andy. My little boy Gillette.
That's the last one you get.
This is my first letter from my little boy Andy since he was ejaculated from that school for help. He was caught scuba diving in the shower of the Tri Delta sorority house. Oy vey, I'm telling you, my poor boy. He worked so hard at Cornell, and now he had to go to Puerto Rico. He went to Puerto Rico to become an engineer. He's such a fine little engineer. He writes me this letter here to tell me, oh, this table, she's moving, what he's been up to in Puerto Rico. I'll read you the letter from my little boy Andy. Let me see here what he says. He says, dear Mama, I am making you very proud of me. I am working 23 hours a day in an electronics factory or they use an electrician. I wear a suit and a tie and green eyeshadow every day. No, he's such a good boy, my Andy. I don't drink or smoke or go out with girls, or do any more wild things that used to make you cry. I need to sit down. I am a good boy, and I read the holy book when I am not working. I just got a raise, good thing for him, and I earn $27 a month. I save 26 for you, Mama. Then, I have to go and pray now. I miss you as ever your loving son, Andy. P.S. By the time you receive this letter, Mama, I may be on my way home for my first visit with you. What? Who's this at the door? Oh, yeah.
Come to see my mama. I told you I'd come to see her. I sent you a letter and everything.
Oh, my God, he loves me. He does love me.
So, Mama, how are you doing here? It's a fun, it's cheap place you're in here.
Daddy, you spend me $26 a month. Where do you expect?
Mama, listen, I want the bigger, better things. Mama, listen.
What you been doing with yourself?
Well, I got engineer, Mama. You know that. I got here in Puerto Rico. I'm doing a little better than that, Mama. But I tell you, so I got something a little bit, a little side job. What are you doing? I got Mama, see, you see, I have a little tropical garden up the side of my house. Oh, yeah. See, Mama. Well, I have a girlfriend, Mama, but you don't think you want to see her at this time, Mama? I got some garden, Mama, and people come to me, Mama, and they buy things from me. I
You sell flowers?
Yeah, Mama, I get some stuff for her, Mama. These people, they come over and they spend lots of money.
I'm sure you say. You get to spend the flowers?
This is good stuff here. Hey, you like that stuff, Mama?
But I never ate powdered sugar like that before.
Mama, see, an engineer is like, it's a good job, Mama. Don't pay a lot, and I got to do this thing here, but
Engineers do this.
Oh yeah, Mama. Everybody's got something to do, and I'm gonna take you out of this place, Mama. I got a bigger place for you to go.
What's these plants you sell? The brown plants, the green?
They make you feel funny, Mama.
You make them with cigarettes.
Oh, no, we don't do that, Mama. No, that's your son, an engineer, Mama. I'm down here working on a control system, you know what I mean? I'm an engineer, you know.
Puerto Rico has been very good for you. I don't know about you, but that sugar wasn't a MasterCard. I think I'll go shopping now.
Mama, I can leave her some of this stuff for you, Mama. If you don't feel good, this is good for when you get older, you know. You just make a little
You know how my bones are.
Yeah, you know.
Take this
I can feel it right now, Mama.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. Let's go shopping.
Listen, Mama, I can't stay too long here, but I gotta go. See, I got a big special business arrangement in Miami. You know, we got a boat coming in. I gotta go see that the boat.
You got your own boat now.
Yeah, I got a boat coming in.
This boy's doing very well as an engineer.
Well, Mama, listen, good to see you.
I love
Thank you, Mama.
Oh, get rid of those pointed shoes.
Okay, Mama.
Look at that.
You know, kind of longer stay in Graterford Prison, that he finally decided to go back to school to learn copywriting. To say that he had writing talent is just like saying that Dolly Parton is flat-chested. I mean, it was like a meteor soaring through the sky. It was instant success for him. He had great, rare talent. You probably remember the first bestseller that he had. It was a classic, and I know that you'll remember many of the lines. You can feel the man putting his passion and his deepest thoughts into this writing. Do you remember these words? See Jane, see Dick. See Dick and Jane. See Spot, see the ball. Do you remember those? Well, there was success after success as Andy wrote more and more copy. You'll surely remember one of his greatest triumphs, the 1968 Volkswagen Service Manual. Do you remember how beautiful that was? It was a very poignant book. And then he went on to still another greater masterpiece, the complete schedule for the Long Island Railroad. You remember that one? But maybe his greatest triumph of all, and the thing that will go down in history for, the thing that I remember him for every year, and you again can feel the passion of the man coming out in his writing and the logic and the rationale behind every word. Remember these words? I know you'll know what book it's from. Combine lines 8 and 19 and enter the net gain or loss here. No, line 20 is a loss and skip lines 21 through 23 and complete lines 24 and 25. Now listen to this syntax. If line 20 is a gain, complete lines 21 through 23 and skip lines 24 and 25. Could anybody else write that but Andy Levy? And if line 20 shows a gain, enter the smaller of line 19 or line 20. Enter 0 if there is a loss or no entry on line 19. We have Andy to thank for that kind of writing.
Oh, boy.
Well, let's go on to one other moving episode in Andy's life. Let's look at in on Mama Levy reading another letter from her little Wojciech.
Well, then, this little son of mine is such a wonderful person. I haven't heard from my little Andy in a while. He's been very busy since Puerto Rico. This letter makes old Mama's heart so proud. I will read this letter to you from my little boy Andy. He says, Dear Mama, I have just started to work for an exciting company, Air Shields. They make wonderful healthcare products. And I am going to introduce a new line of bedside monitors from which they expect much growth. And already my boss says, Andy, your ideas are setting this place on fire.
Andy, engineering department has combined your great marketing ideas with Czechoslovakian engineering. What we got to do? Flora is going to set market on fire. Uh-oh.
Well, Joe, you really did something. But at least it makes a nice clean air. What are we going to do now? We have 50,000 of these out in hospitals. Out of all the fire departments next to the hospitals.
Back to the drawing board.
Well, the engineers at Air Shields, I understand, went back to work for about 4 years and really put their hearts and souls into coming up with an improved TCP monitor that would absolutely erase all the problems that poor Andy had faced with that first venture. And it was a fateful day in 1984 when the new model,
Number 2. You have no idea. You come up with new improved. Guaranteed. Restowski approved. Oh. You want to see?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
You sure?
Come on, let's work it out.
You sure?
Oops. No, sure. I don't know.
Joy,
Just forget it.
Joy,
See what you can do with microwave oven.
always a daring athlete with a body honed to perfection. Andy just isn't satisfied with fencing in his life. No, he's got to take up something really risky like skydiving, something courageous. Let's look in on Mama Levy at this particular episode of Andy's life.
Andy, this boy, I don't know what I'm going to do with him. I get this letter from my son. He scares me half to death. He's very athletic, this boy of mine. But wait till you hear what he's up to now. What the mother to do. Dear Mama, I am doing something new and very exciting. I have been jumping out of airplanes now for over 2 weeks. It is the biggest thrill I've ever had. Last week, my good friend Joe Moffett, who is 6'3", jumped out of the plane and landed on his feet. He is now 4'5". I really love this sport. But Mama, until I've done it several times, you being the mama that you are, would you please keep washing up my underpants? Thank you, your little boy Chula, Andy. I don't know what I'm going to keep doing with these things, but they keep having these brown spots in the bottom of them. Skydiving? He's into skydiving? My son Andy, what? Look at that. You part of that kid, huh? Yes. Yeah, apparently I'm on again.
Mama is a little senile, but she's all over.
I keep forgetting these things, but you expect. Then, my boy Andy, he skydives with his friend Joe Moffett. Joe Moffett, he's a very nice boy. He has a very nice wife, Sally. And he has 3 gorgeous little children, my son Andy. He loves those children. I wanted to tell you about my boy Andy. He takes care of watching the babysitter when the babysitter watches the children. He likes that babysitter. And sometimes my boy Andy, he's been known to babysit himself. He writes me this letter. Dear Mama, as you well know, my friend Joe has 3 wild, crazy children. These children, though, Mama, they are good children. So I help him out when he and Sally needs to go out for dinner. I go over and I babysit the children. I really love those children, Mama. You know, it makes me think, maybe finally, this boy is over 30 years old. Maybe finally being around these children, he'll get married himself, and finally, I will have my own grandson. I can see him now, babysitting the little children. He especially is partial to the little girls. Hi, girls. Hi, Andy.
Don't tell him, Andy.
Yeah, we really do have to leave soon.
Sally, I know, we're just about to go out. We're looking now going, Girls, now I want you to listen. So put your hair off. Or put anything down your throat. Episodes from Andy's past. I hope that gives you a better. What?
Are they available?
I hope that gives you some insight into the depth of the man. Don't you feel a little ashamed of yourself for not filling out those forms this morning? What I'm going to do now is ask you to imagine what the future holds in store for Andy Levy. It's something that we wish him the well in, and let's just take a look. I think we should go back to the touchstone in his life, which is Mama Levy, and listen to her one more time read a letter that she just got from him.
Andy. What am I going to do with this boy, Andy? I get another letter from him. 6 months already I haven't heard from this boy. I'll read this letter to you. Dear Mama, I am going to Denmark. This boy has been to Denmark many times already with these monitors he's been working with. I'm going to Denmark to start a new life. It's something I've always wanted to do. I want to do my own thing. I've been a Puerto Rican drug pusher, a world-famous copywriter, and a successful engineer. Now it's extremely important. I have to truly find myself. For the first time, Mama, I feel free and truly fulfilled only in Scandinavia. By the time you read this, I may be home. Hopefully, I may be home. What's this? Oi there! It's my little bracelet! Me who? Oi there, my boy, are you Andy?
I always wanted to be me.
My boy, look at you! Show them how well you turned out! Andy, your mama still loves you, Andrea. Whatever you want is fine. There's my grandson. Are you coming still, buddy?
Well, thanks for bearing with us through a rather troubled life. There's There are several people here who want to express their deep personal gratitude. Some people can't weather it any problem. They want to express their deep personal gratitude to Andy, and I'm going to ask them to come out now and make their little tribute. No, here.
I'd like to start this personal tribute with some advice to Andy from Robert Emmons Rogers, who lived in 1888. I thought this advice would be appropriate in Andy's next job. It was advice to the class of 1929 at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And that advice is, marry the boss's daughter.
Jimmy better play, that's
I also have, for Andy's next job, a personalized desk bed for him to use and remind all of his fellow employees in his new position just where he got his experience and ability to deal with business. In addition, I'd like to grant you this letter opener with the Healthline seal.
The samurai suit,
Because of the pay cut, I really had wanted to get Andy a cross pen, but I couldn't afford that, so I thought to myself, well, what's the next best thing? And so I came up with a group of Healthline pencils for Andy to use in his next position.
The short-term management.
From one of our many advertisers, they sent in a 1985 calendar for all of their advertising that we put in for them over 1984, so I thought Andy would like to take it with him in his new position.
Dave's getting kickbacks again.
And perhaps one of the most important gifts I'd like to give Andy is this set of exclusive, top secret, confidential, not to be opened by anyone blueprints from Healthline with all their plans for future products over the next 5 years.
I ain't gonna open it.
Okay, and Gary Schindel has something he wants to say to Andy.
Well, you got to open this before I go on. Please.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. One more thing. The reason that all this has happened. A one-pump did-it-all button.
Andy's leaving me some awfully big shoes to fill.
I think you should.
Open it.
Open it.
And it's going to be tough to fill in and follow in his footsteps, and more than anything else, I need to say I need to say thank you more than anything else to Andy. But the gift that I have for him is something that represents the time and effort that I put in on behalf of Andy and the monitoring department. We've all heard of the famous painting, The Nude Descending the Staircase. Well, we have a new portrait here for him, which you can take with him, which we have so appropriately titled Nude. Come on, hurry up. Nude Raising Blood Pressure. And if it doesn't raise your blood pressure, it'll certainly raise something else. You've been wondering what I've been doing at the time.
Andy.
So I know all this time. See?
Andy.
Shut up, man.
You're here for a year, and you finally come up with some good marketing.
I did this over a year ago. I'm waiting for a reason to use it. Pass it around. No, we had Donna pose. Different ways. Anyway, I wish Joe were here because I wanted to give him a little advice with Andy. As many of you may have known, I vacationed with Andy in the spring down at the Virgin Islands, and I can't help but wonder what Joe and Sally and Andy are going to do on that boat in the middle of the ocean down in the Virgin Islands in the next couple of weeks.
I'm waiting for them to surprise me.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if this is... Never mind. Andy, there's one thing I'd like to say, which probably only you, unless some of you others have been told the story. If you remember last year's national sales meeting and the event leading to the airport, remember that life is a run to the bushes. But remember when you step, because you never know who's going to be looking. Andy, thank you for everything. Good luck. You're Godspeed in your next.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, Mr.
Since we were talking about Andy's new office and what he was going to open mail with and write letters with and talk about in terms of modifying, I did forget one thing, and that is something for Andy to display in his new office. It's basically an ad that Andy came up with, and it says, "Wear Health Dime. Air Shields is Health Dime. KDC is Health Dime. Pilling is Health Dime. Telecare is Health Dime. Narco Biosystems is Health Dime. Andy Levy is not Health Dime."
Another tribute from his boss, Jim Tornetto.
Yay,
My buddy. I don't have a lot of negative things to say about it. I really don't. But I want everybody to look at this. I'm sure everybody knows what this is. Symbolic of a person who's worked at Air Shields for 5 years, received the Distinguished 5-Year Award. In Andy's case, it's the... Of course, his ass stayed here that long. But I've been holding this off because this actually became due in October. And somehow I didn't think Andy would make it much beyond October, so I decided to hold it. But before I give it to Andy, I thought everybody should know a little bit about the track record, because probably the only guy here that knows him well enough to know some of the things that how he reached the epitome of being marketing manager.
It's all a lie.
No, this is serious. Andy, I met Andy back at a company called Extracorporeal, which is in King of Prussia. And before they went under, him and I used to work there. And, that's right. He started out as a tech writer. Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar with the term, it's comparable to what Jack Sweeney and Jim Kennedy and Bill Frank do at Air Shields. So he started as a tech writer, and you had to see him back then. I mean, he was really weird. He's weird now, but he was really worse then.
You should talk.
Do you remember Mr. Peepers back in the old days? That's what he used to remind us of back at that Extracorporeal. But he was a tech writer working for some real weird guy named Dick Lecotte. And Dick was a little strange, a little, and I think Andy fit right in, but by the way, Terry said it's love. And that's an inside joke, which will become more obvious as the tape, plays in the future time. Anyway, he, from a tech writer, he went into engineering, and he got involved initially as the counterpart of, remember Ian Davidson here at Air Shields? Well, he was the UL CSA guy down at Extracorporeal. Of course, he screwed that up, and they decided to promote him to an engineer, which they typically do. So he wound up becoming an engineer assigned to an infusion pump back at Extracorporeal. We have some other people here who are from Extracorporeal involved with an infusion pump. That company went under, and see what I mean? But anyway, Andy was involved with that, and he really didn't know what he was doing. And the product line died, the product had all kinds of problems, so he figured he'd better get out while the game was good. So he wound up in Puerto Rico, of all places, right? So from Puerto Rico, he went to South Carolina, which apparently was part owner of this place in
Alabama.
Oh, it was Alabama, that's right, Alabama, I'm sorry. He's in Alabama. And that's what prompted me. I met him in Puerto Rico at one of our sales meetings, okay, because I knew I was coming to Puerto Rico, got in touch with the guy, then I found I was very disenchanted with this job that he had. So we kind of talked about air shields and the opportunities at air shields. And I tried to get a hold of him one day to find out, if I can get him up for an interview. And I called his father. And that's the whole purpose of this thing here. I want to explain to you the conversation I had with his father. It was the strangest conversation I've ever had in my life. I called this guy basically to ask him, can I get Andy's phone number, right? And his father proceeds to tell me about Andy's history as a baby, of all things. And he starts telling me, this is the honest guy's truth. His father says to me, Andy was really different as a baby. Like most babies already cry and they get sick. Andy never cried. He never cried as a baby. He never got sick. I started thinking about him too, and I didn't know how to take that, And he said, even as he was getting older, he was always different than all the other kids. I was sitting like, what the hell is he telling me all this? But anyway, it was obvious at that time that Andy is different. And if anybody that knows Andy, when he came into Air Shields, he was a little bit different, a little bit withdrawn. As a matter of fact, he was so withdrawn that we had to lock his windows at night because many times he thought he was going to jump out because of the pressure. But he finally made the transition into marketing, and he's come out of his shell a little bit. And I just think it's great. And I'd like to give you this on behalf of the company for 5 years of great work. Excellent. You've come a really, really long way. I don't know if anybody knew Andy before 5 years ago. He's come a long way, and he's just done a hell of a job for the company. And it's just, I consider him the best friend and one of the best friends I have.
Just want you to know that the people in the ship that dropped me off want to get you.
I don't doubt it.
I'm almost humbled by this because somebody has come a long distance for this, and he's a very important person and has a tribute to pay to Andy. He's from our parent company. He came in the back door just 5 minutes ago. The plane touched down about a half an hour ago. We knew that he was coming, so we did save time for him. And he has something personal he wants to say to Andy.
You realize what I have on my hands?
Can you bring out the health thing?
Pulling my hair out lately. It is slightly disturbing to see the large turnout at this, excuse me, our affair. As I look around the room, it appears that there are 99% of the Air Shields employees. Be so as it may, it's my pleasure at this time to present from our company to one of our a small token of our appreciation. Actually, Terry Dewberry wanted to be here to make this present. But it seems like he's pulled out of town a little early to prepare his condo for a special visitor coming down. Andy has been very instrumental in bringing our company to where it is today. I must say I'm not very proud. Normally, stock options are canceled when an employee leaves our company. But Terry asked that Andy be given special preference. Andy, these options can be exercised any time before the end of the year. There are options for 2 shares at $1. Options for 10 shares at $5. We have options for 100 shares at $25. 500 shares at $50. And 10,000 shares at
$1,000. All yours, provided they're exercised by the end of the year. Thank you.
We do have a serious note now. Jenny?
Oh. I wasn't ready.
Jenny, get serious.
I get the serious part of this whole thing. Okay. You know that Andy is a computer nut, so to speak. And we got quite a contribution, matter of fact, we got like $98 for a gift for him, which I think says a lot of how people feel about Andy, and so...
50 myself.
And we weren't sure what to get him, so we kind of had to take a consensus what he would like, so there you go. Which he knows about, because we weren't sure what to get him, but then we also have some cash since he's going on vacation that he can use on his trip. Yay!
This whole thing, and it was a mess getting people down. I don't mean the event was wonderful. The planning was difficult, and she did a super job, and I just think Ed Hackey has something he'd like to say.
Well, Andy, after an all-night effort by the engineering department, embodying all the marketing requirements into our first prototype of your latest low-tech health-saving $1 million product, it is with great pleasure and no mean amount of sweat that we have been able to beat the schedule and bring it in substantially under budget. We feel it is with your guidance, your perseverance, that we have been able to accomplish this feat. We therefore ask you to unveil this first prototype at this auspicious occasion.
Is it going to blow?
This is a ribbon cable.
Now
we know what that is.
Drum roll, please. I'm so excited.
we really did a shit.
You can't run out of film before I get my turn.
Yes, you can, Mom. Absolutely.
Yeah, long time.
Just about it now.
Yeah.
Wait, here. Dylan's running out.
The opens like
Really, or is it kidding?
Is it really running out?
You hired me, buddy. I've never been to one.
She meant in the show.
That's great.
I knew you wouldn't follow the marketing spec.
All right, now everybody gets up very quickly and leaves very quickly. We won't have to listen to Andy.
Quick, one.
Paybacks are hell.
Now everybody knows I don't have an addictive bone in my body. Not me. I just want to say a few words about people that I'm leaving. First, many of you probably don't realize Dave Miller is a very good friend of my parents, and I'm going to see that that changes. Secondly, now I haven't gone into the extensive preparation that everybody here has, who's been so good to me. I just have a few things I'd like to talk about. I've known a lot of people in my time at Air Shields, and they all have certain special talents. So I decided before I left, I would have to just give a little thank you to everybody, at least some of the key people, based on what they did to me this afternoon.
Oh, God.
to recognize their talents. So I put together a set of awards that I think should become annual affairs at air shows. You can give these awards out every year. And I did it for the two departments that I've been most closely associated with, engineering and marketing.
Won't be here next year.
Engineering, I had an awful lot to say, so I decided that there's too many of them and not enough of me. So I would just hit the three of the key people, the ones that I've worked with. So now I apologize for the quality of these awards. I had drafting doing me some nice pictures with all laid out, but unfortunately the documentation won't be available till February. I'd like to present the first award. This is the best accent over the paging system. The winner is Joe Down. I have to say, it's very, very close. The runners-up were Pete Petit and Mike Donald. So, Joe, you can come up and get your award anytime you want. The next award here is the Pierre Cardin Fashion Award. And Fashion Award, and this goes to Fred Hackey for his red doublemint blazer. The final award, I think, should go to the head of the department, and this is the Fantasy Island Wishful Thinking Award. This goes to Bob Gostowski for his never-ending plea, first to Narco and then to Helpline, for adequate funding, enough people, and a special R&D group with $100 million a year, and the only contact with the civilized world being via carrier pigeon. Like I said, I had to reserve the best for marketing, of course, since they're the people that I've been most close to. So, in order not to offend anybody, I'm going in alphabetical order, except for Dave Miller. I've saved him for last. I think he'd be the mastermind of this whole thing. So, first, I'd like to award the Best Use of Color Award to Donna Bavesky for her fluorescent red blouse with matching shoes and her fluorescent lavender blouse, also with matching shoes. Next, this is a very, very distinguished award. This is the Unidentified Archaeological Artifact Award. And this goes to Ed Belfield. Nobody knows how long he's been up there. Say that to Terry. The next award, this was sponsored by the United States government. This is the Immigration and Naturalization Service Award. This goes to Michael Donnelly, who, despite working and living in the United States for 5 years, is still considered an illegal alien. Okay, next award to recognize some excellent strategic planning on the part of a new member of the department, the Nice Move Award to Brenda Head for getting the hell out of Marietta just before all this event.
Lost the hearing, Ma.
Okay, next award is the And If You Believe That Story Award. And that goes to Carol Himmelstein for everything she tells us about how she was such a good girl in high school.
All right, let's go.
It's a nice story.
Productive members of the marketing department. This is the association with her word process. Okay, next is goes to somebody that's worked for me for a while. This is the Frank Lloyd Wright Architecture Award to Ginny McCarty for consistently allowing my filing to approach the appearance and height of the World Trade Okay, now Dave Miller would be next, but I'll save his awards for last. The next,
You're in for it, David.
that one's last. Both last. Next one is the worst daily Cyndi Lauper impersonation. That, of course, goes to Lee. Okay, now I'm really sorry that the next recipient of this award couldn't be here. This is a good friend of mine. This award is the You Can't Keep a Good Man Down Award, presented to Joe Moffett, who a recent University of Texas research study has just proven will continue to laugh hysterically and be pathologically horny 3 years after his death. Anybody willing to accept this?
Touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Okay, next award.
That's what he says.
It's a volunteer here.
I noticed that. Next award is the Harry Houdini Magic Act Award, and this goes to Rich Murphy for having an entire product line disappear. Okay, next award goes to one of our newest members. This is the Long-Term Emotional Relationship Award, and it goes to Gary Schindel, whose statistics show averages a new girlfriend every 132.7 hours. Next, now this is a special dual award. This goes to two very special people. This is the only thing missing is the Cross Award, and it goes to Jim Tornetta and Diane Keller for their job. They get nailed every day. Okay, now I have actually three more awards. The first two go to David Miller. He deserves special mention. The first award, he touched on it this afternoon in some of his presentations. This is the Eric Sigel Literary Discrimination Award. And this goes to David Miller for his unfailing record of employing the absolute worst copywriters available for all our advertising.
Good copy, and you said big bus.
Okay, the next award requires a little bit of background. A lot of you may not know. For the last, 5 or 6 years, I guess, Dave has had a very successful sheep farm in Chalfont. And he's a careful, devoted shepherd who constantly enlightens us with little anecdotes about the sheep. They each have their own names. He's especially fond of Laverne. It gives me great pleasure to give Dave the Paper Bag Award, since he's constantly telling us how it doesn't matter since we're all the same in the dark. One special award from the President of the United States himself, the Ronald Reagan Civic Duty Award, presented to Healthdyne for their extraordinary efforts in 1984 in keeping inflation down. Wait is low.
See,
Get you back.
well, you can, you're gonna love it.
It's the only one that works.
Yeah. Finally got it. A little late, but we finally got it.
God, they look at that.
No, really,
What
nobody's
is
talking
it?
about Andy's future yet. But I found out what he's gonna do. He's gonna go to the Virgin Islands, travel around the world, and then he's gonna open up a used car lot. And he's gonna call it Levy's Late Model Lemons. He's out there, see, when you're selling used cars, they can get tough, you know, start raining, snowing. So I figure, if you start to get discouraged, just look at those. Gas piles will go what you have. Run a grip test.
Well, have a nice weekend.
For those of you that thought you were going to be rid of you, I'm probably going to be back for the last 2 weeks in December.